He's a violent guy, and he's killed millions of people. He's tortured. They have a torture chamber in the middle of Caracas that they were closing up. But he's tortured people. And
President Trump there this morning after the arrest over the weekend of Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. The president is now warning the leaders of Colombia, Mexico, Cuba. And a new opinion piece highlights the geopolitical importance of this moment. Quote, by ousting Maduro, Trump has begun to liberate the country while striking at the heart of the axis between Russia, China, and Iran, and providing more democracy, oil, and security to our friends in the Western Hemisphere, end of quote. One of the president's next targets may be Colombian President Gustavo Petro. Trump has said it also involves the cocaine trade there. Petro responded that he would take up arms if the U.S. attacks his country and told the president directly, come and get me, I'm waiting. Now, remember, those are the last words of Nicolas Maduro in the back of that car right before they took him. Jacqui Heinrich at the White House. Jacqui.
Harris, the president says the U.S. is not at war with Venezuela, but he expects U.S. forces will remain in the region for a period of time. There's not a lot of urgency to hold new elections because first, the president wants to revitalize Venezuela's oil industry, which he estimates could happen in less than 18 months. This coming week, Energy Secretary Chris Wright is expected to meet with oil executives to hear out their concerns for securing their investments, given the country's history of political instability and also nationalizing natural resources. Speaking to members of Congress this morning at the newly rebranded Trump Kennedy Center, the president touted this operation as a massive success and a display of American might that adversaries should take note of.
But the United States proved once again that we have the most powerful, most lethal, most sophisticated, and most fearsome. It's a fearsome military on planet Earth, and it's not even close. You know, I've been saying it for a long time. Nobody can take us.
Analysts say this administration made a calculated choice to work with the remnants of the Maduro regime, the interim president now, Delcy Rodriguez, rather than depose the government and the remains of the Maduro regime, which would likely require troops on the ground. President Trump said Cuba could likely fall next because it has been financially sustained by Venezuela, and he fired a warning shot at neighboring Colombia, whose president responded, as you mentioned, Harris, with a threat to take up arms. Now, Democrats have largely condemned Maduro's arrest as an act of war without congressional authorization, something the president and his allies have said they just can't understand.
We want everything. But they say that when you win the presidency, you lose the midterm. I wish you could explain to me what the hell's going on with the mind of the public, because we have the right policy. They don't. They have horrible policy. They do stick together. They're violent. They're vicious. You know, they're vicious people. And they stick together like glue.
The president emphasized that Republicans should do well in the midterms if they can get on message about touting their successes and stick together. Harris.
Jacqui, thank you. The U.S. State Department has posted a powerful image of the president yesterday with this caption, "This is our hemisphere, and President Trump will not allow our security to be threatened." In focus now, Mike Pompeo, former Secretary of State and Fox News contributor. You're hearing some things like the Monroe Doctrine, a lot of things. Welcome to the program. As we come in, I want to get your thoughts on our hemisphere.
Yes, what happened, goodness, now just over 50 hours ago was really important for America and for our hemisphere. Frankly, as you pointed out in your opening, for the whole world, we demonstrated once again that President Trump, when American interests are at stake, right? Narco trafficking into our country, killing millions of Americans, all the terror that had flown through Venezuela from the Chinese, the Russians, and the Iranians. When American interests are at stake, President Trump will act in a way that doesn't deploy thousands of American troops for years. Instead, uses our military very effectively to protect and defend the things that matter most to Americans. It was not only a successful military operation, but I think will prove to have been an important operational and tactical operation on top of that.
And maybe, and I mentioned this just moments ago as an aside, you headed up the CIA, and maybe some tactical mistakes by Maduro riding around in a moving car just before he was taken. I mean, giving them a GPS dream. Anyway, Politico was reporting that U.S. officials have given Venezuela's new acting president a list of demands now because she wants to stay in place. She's officially the acting president after having been the vice president, her old boss, Maduro. Here are the demands: cracking down on the drug flow, kicking out Iranian and Cuban and other networks that are hostile to the U.S., stopping oil sales to the U.S. adversaries, and to eventually facilitating a free election and stepping aside. Your take?
Harris, that's the exact right list. I know Delcy Rodriguez. I know Pedrino, the head of the military. I'd worked with them, talking to them through our intermediaries when I was a CIA director and Secretary of State. These are committed Chavistas. These are people who believed in Maduro and his model because they were beneficiaries of it. They had nice lives, beautiful homes, all of that. If we can apply enough coercive power against them and convince them to behave in a way that delivers against those objectives, this will have been an enormous strategic victory on top of the tactical operational success. But that's the task ahead. I just remind folks who are already screaming that this hasn't happened fast enough. This is 25 years of Maduro. It is not going to happen in 25 hours or even 25 days. We need to have a little bit of patience, and then we need to make sure we hold accountable the new leadership in Venezuela. And we will get to elections. There'll be a right moment for that. The reason the Venezuelan people are cheering, both inside the country and Venezuelans who have had to abandon their countries, because they know that this now has unlocked an enormous opportunity. And the hard work ahead has to be delivered on. And when it is, that joy can be real and sustained, and a prosperous Venezuela can lead to a much more secure America here in our own hemisphere.
Really quickly, the one thing that's not mentioned by name on that list are the drug cartels. And I don't know if Delcy Rodriguez can contain or sustain in conditions under that kind of pressure, because they are real.
Harris, this is the reason the president talks about Costa Rica, Mexico, right? These cartels are very powerful political players in each of those countries as well. You're precisely right to focus on that. She is going to have to figure out a way to take them down, keep herself alive at the same time. This is the challenge, but take them down. And this is what has to happen in each of these countries to protect not only their people and the horrible kleptocracies inside of their country, the narco-terrorists, but keep Americans safe as well from these drugs flowing into our country.
And my quick follow, as promised, are those countries willing to work together? Will you see President Sheinbaum in Mexico, and will we work with them to root out those cartels?
They have to. They have to, not only for our sake, because I think we'll demand that of us, but they have to do it for their own sake and for the sake of their own people as well. This is not about America imposing its will. It's about America assisting them in getting back the opportunity for their people to live in peace and prosperity, not under the jackboot of the narco-terrorists inside of their own countries as well. I think President Sheinbaum understands that. I hope that she'll get there quickly.
Mike Pompeo, it is always great to have your expertise. Happy New Year. Good to see you.
Happy New Year, Harris. Bless you. Have a good day.
Thank you. Blessings to you.
Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Compagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.